Welcome back to Marketing with Heart. Module 2, Lesson 2, Domain Names, Web Hosting, and cPanel. In this lesson, you're going to learn what a domain name is and where you will go to get your own, what a web hosting service is and how to get one, and what cPanel is and why you need it. Okay, what is a domain name? A domain name is www.domainname.com, and you have to buy your domain name. So if you don't have one yet, that's the first thing you need. And I recommend that you definitely buy your own name first and last, but then you also buy the name of your business. Now, sometimes that name might be taken. There are a number of places that you can go to buy a domain name. I use Domain Discover, and if you look here, you can see it says Welcome Dawn. I've been using Domain Discover for a number of years. This is where I buy my domains. I also buy domain names based on some of the kinds of content that I create for my clients and some of the ideas I have for possible products or services in the future. Let's just do Lumber San Diego. I'm just pulling an idea out of my head here. Let's say you have a lumber shop in San Diego. .com available for $11.98 a year. I mean, that's pretty reasonable, right? So this is basically what you do. Depending on what your business is, you might want to buy a number of them. You might want to buy the .net or the .org or the .co. Just again, it depends on how much you want to build out in the future, but primarily you're looking for the .com or the .net or the .org. .info is okay too. You want to keep your domain name very relevant to what it is you do or who it is you serve, and make sure that it's simple to remember. So, for example, one of my websites is my name, dawndelvecchio.com. Another is marketingwithheart.org. Why isn't it marketingwithheart.com? Because when I wanted to buy that, it was already taken, so I went for .org. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is web hosting services. But before we do, I want to talk quickly about WordPress, because there's a little bit of confusion here. You see, there's two kinds of WordPress. There's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. So sometimes when I talk with people about, and I say, are you using WordPress as your website? They say, well, I downloaded WordPress to my computer, but I'm having a hard time. All right, that's because if you want to use a full-on, if you want to have a full-on website using WordPress as your interface, as your platform, you need to have a web hosting service. You can host it privately yourself, but if you don't even know how to use WordPress in the first place, you definitely don't want to wrangle with having to host a web site. So there's WordPress.com and WordPress.org. And to dive into this, to understand the difference, you can go here to this site. Well, you can just ask the question, what's the difference between WordPress.com and WordPress.org in a search, and it'll bring you, this site will come up, but it's basically en.support.wordpress.com/com-vs-org. And this explains the difference. But in a nutshell, here it is. WordPress.com is a hosting platform for people to blog. You cannot advertise on it. It's not your own site. It'll be like mydomainname.wordpress.com. All right, you want your domain name to be mydomainname.com or .org or whatever, right? So when you use WordPress.com, it's very easy, it's very simple, but it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. You can't advertise, you can't have a regular domain name, and there's a bunch of plugins you can't use. Basically, it's a little bit of a glorified blog site. So what you need to use is WordPress.org. And here's where people get stuck. They get this far, they read this, and they go, oh, okay, I understand. I need to use WordPress.org. And then they go and download WordPress onto their computer. You don't need to have WordPress downloaded onto your computer to have a website. What you need is a web host. In other words, someone who's hosting your site for you. And then from that web hosting service, they're the ones who have the WordPress.org that lets you manage your site via WordPress. And if that's not 100% clear, that's okay. Just know you do not need to download WordPress onto your site. You need to get a web host. So let's move on here. If you're not sure what a web host is, you can go ahead and do a little search. You can read it on Wikipedia. I had pulled up this site here, which was nice because it showed a little spread sheet of the top 10 ranked web hosting services. Bluehost is very well known. Many of you recognize GoDaddy. That's lost popularity because of some of their decisions apparently related to their clients and privacy. I like Lunar Pages. This was recommended to me early on when I first started, and I found their services to be really helpful. The one thing I want to tell you about web hosting services is this: there's a lot of competition. And therefore, you should expect a high level of customer service. If you don't get a high level of customer service, change your web host. You can change your web host without changing your domain name or anything. It's a pretty simple process. So whichever you choose, if you decide to go with Bluehost or any of these other ones, just know that if you're not happy with the customer service, if you can't find someone to get on the phone with you and talk you through getting your site up and running, then find someone else. I, as I said, have been very happy with Lunar Pages. Now, each web hosting service has many different kinds of packages you can choose from. And again, it's worth getting on a live chat with someone. If they don't have a live chat for you to speak to some 20-something who was born into the internet era, go to another option. Find another web hosting service. But usually you can find a place where the different hosting services are available. And I use the business hosting here, and you can see starting price. And the reason I pulled this up is so you can see how much I'm paying a month or per year per website. So you're looking at about $250 a year, $240 a year to host your website. So you've got $12 a year to buy the domain name and another $250-ish. That's about what you're looking at for the cost of your website annually, just to give you that sense. Now, once you've purchased your domain name and you've selected a web hosting service and you've talked to them and you've said, look, I want to use WordPress to build my website, they should be able to talk you through getting everything up and running through the inside of their web host. And they'll talk you through that. You want to be sure to have cPanels. cPanel is just basically a way for you to interface so that you don't have to know code in order to run your website. cPanel is a common interface used by web hosting providers to make it easier for your subscribers, that would be you, to manage your domain. That's all. Very simple. So when you order your web hosting, you want to be sure also to have cPanel and ask someone to help you set up WordPress through their hosting service. And I'm going to say that one more time. You want to tell them you want cPanel and you want someone to talk you through setting up WordPress on their web hosting service. And now we're going to start diving right into WordPress.